All right. Well, good evening. My name is Steve Moran, and I'm a consultant with State Support Team, family engagement consultant. Thank you for coming this evening. We're really excited to have you here for the final installment of our 2021-22 family parent engagement evening series. You are undoubtedly going to get some great information this evening from our two resident experts on PBIS and SEL. Tara Fenton and TJ Went. I will go ahead and turn it over to them. I'm merely here for logistics and learning purposes because I'm sure I will learn something as well from these two great people in this field of work. So I'm excited that you guys have the privilege of being here with them to hear about all great things PBIS and SEL. So I will turn it over to them. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box and we will, one of the three of us will monitor them. And I look forward to your positive experience this evening. Thanks again for being here.
Thanks, Steve. I'm Tara Fenton. I work with Steve and TJ at the State Support Team. I assist districts, buildings, community schools, and career centers with implementing PBIS and SEL in their schools. My background comes from mental health, and before I came to the SST, I was a behavior specialist for 13 years. So TJ, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
So along with Tara, I also do PBIS and SEL at the State Support Team, and my background is mostly being a teacher and a principal, an assistant principal.
So I would also like to know who's here today. So if in chat, you want to say who you are and the school district that you represent today.
I can go. My name's Ashley Rastoffer, and I'm here from St. Peter's Elementary in Mansfield.
Thank you.
We have Cynthia Williams, transition liaison from Virtual Academy, Ohio Virtual Academy. Brittany Collins is one of our amazing parent mentors that I also have the privilege of working with out in Newark City School. She is here this evening.
I was just in Newark today, just earlier. I met with one of the elementaries.
Groveport and the ESC. Andrea is our family, and I'll probably mess this up, Andrea, I'm sorry, family liaison on the ESC side. So we do some work together. Katie Leist, Focus North High School, Upper Arlington City Schools. I think you have a pretty good mix of parents, parent mentors, school personnel. Danny Nickel, Union County Board of DD service consultant. So you got a great mix, it looks like.
Great. Well, welcome to everybody, and thank you for taking time today. I hope that you have all had a fabulous Monday. It's been wet, but I hope it's been fabulous for you. I want to start by taking a mindful minute. Go ahead and take a look at the 5 things that I'd like to have you give yourself today and even every day. So read through those, and I'm going to give you a minute to reflect on which one speaks to you the most today.
Tara, we have a lot of good ideas in the chat.
Okay, it's still a minute, so I wanted to give them a mindful minute, TJ, mindful minute. It's all right, we're close to the end. All right, I opened up chat and thank you guys so much for sharing what you're being mindful about. Again, giving yourself permission is very important, not only to ask for help, but again, collaboration and negotiation and all those important pieces that we're going to talk about today. Next, I'd like to do an SEL practice, which is the welcoming ritual. Now, in a welcoming ritual, that starts out when groups do work together. We're also going to end on an optimistic closure today. Being grateful is so important in the overall health of all of us. So in this PowerPoint, you are also getting the links. It should hyperlink in the PowerPoint in your bit.ly link resources. The grateful link is how you and your families can build those grateful moments together. So if you'd like to share in chat, let's find out, what are you grateful for today? Oh, Cynthia, that's very bittersweet. Staff, family, emotions being strong. Thank you, guys. Today, we're going to talk about what is PBIS and what are those appropriate behaviors at school and at home that we need to support. Also, we're going to talk about what is SEL and the importance of developing those social and emotional skills. And then lastly, we're going to talk about, throughout our time together, how those PBIS practices and SEL skills work together to promote the best success for our kids. I know that education is a lot of alphabet soup. So I've been using PBIS and SEL. So let's talk about what that actually means and stands for. PBIS stands for Positive Behavioral Interventions and Support. It's a framework for creating safer schools and a positive school culture. PBIS is focused on defining those expectations for behavior, making sure that they're clear for everyone, and making sure that they apply to all areas within the school. As I said, they apply to everyone. This includes students, staff, and our family members and community. On the other hand, we have SEL. SEL stands for Social Emotional Learning. This is a process on how we learn and apply the social emotional knowledge, attitudes, and skill that we develop over time. And it does take time. This focuses on how we recognize and manage emotions, how we handle ourselves and our tasks, how we organize ourselves, how we care for others, how we establish positive relationships, and how we make responsible decisions. Research shows that when we align PBIS practices and SEL supports together, they can promote and improve children's academic, emotional, behavioral, and social success. Best of two worlds. Ohio also recognizes this. Through our state strategic plan, there's a lot of talk about the whole child framework. These are policies that engage both PBIS practices within our schools and SEL skill development. So those practices and policies support students for healthy behaviors, services that include students, families, and the community, engaging others to support all of our wellness. We are very focused on student wellness, and we are also taking note that adults need a focus on wellness for themselves as well. All of this comes together to make sure that we have a safe, supportive school environment. PBIS and SEL both come together to have that safe, welcoming environment. They both focus on prevention by being proactive about what we're doing, and also using that instruction and modeling to teach new skills that kids need. Again, it includes our school and family partnerships. We also rely on community partnerships as well. And then we use data to make sure that we have engaged practices, that we can problem solve as a team to figure out what is the best thing that we can do to improve our environment and to make sure that kids are getting what they need to be successful. PBIS and SEL are both for all students. This includes students who are in preschool all the way up to K, or all the way up to 12th grade. This also includes students who are in the general education population, and also students who are receiving special education services. Both PBIS and SEL have a tiered level of support available to students that are in need. At tier 1, this is where there's universal support for all students. School-wide expectations are identified, those behaviors are taught, practiced, reinforced, modeled, also monitored and corrected when needed. Universal supports also includes SEL curriculum and lessons. And again, this is where prevention and being proactive about what students need is very important at having those foundational pieces in place. At tier 2, this is where targeted supports are in place for students who just aren't successful with tier 1 and need a little bit of extra support. This might include social skill groups. This might include checking in with students throughout the day to make sure that they're following along with their expectations and tasks. If that's still not enough to help students be successful, then we have tier 3. This is more intensive and individualized for our students because it focuses on what they truly need. We might have a functional behavior assessment completed for these students to find out what's motivating for them so that we can create the best behavior plan that we can and focus on those interventions that are needed and meaningful for that student. Any questions so far? TJ, anything that you want to add?
Nope, you are rocking it.
All right, so now we're going to turn our attention to focus specifically on PBIS. PBIS is about setting students up for how they can be their best selves and be most successful. We're going to start with House Bill 318. There are rules and guidance from the state that help encourage PBIS implementation within our schools. So as I said, it started most recently with House Bill 318. The language in the SAFE Act focused on how students can be better at be better at appropriate behaviors within the school to reduce discipline, emphasizing and improving school safety. A lot of the focus for this was because suspensions and expulsions were really on the rise. And because we wanted students to be successful and not to be suspended, not to be expelled, we needed to make sure that there were policies and practices in place for a better school climate. So with House Bill 318, we are able to make sure that PBIS practices help decrease those suspensions to 0, especially for our students in K through 3. So over the years, that number has hopefully gone down in several of the districts and buildings that we work with. In June of 2021, we see PBIS in the language again for the PBIS and restraint and seclusion rule. This rule states that all schools should have policies in place for their K through 12 buildings within each district. It also describes policies for how to use emergency restraint and seclusion, making sure that we have those PBS practices in place. It also focuses on when there are restraints and seclusions after a specific number, the PBIS team in the building should come together and talk about what plan is best for that student. So again, hoping that when we put positive and proactive PBIS practices in place, that we can reduce those misbehaviors and reduce the amount that students need to be restrained and secluded for their safety. If you want to know more about these rules, the documents are provided in the bit.ly link that TJ put in the chat. PBIS is about creating the best environment we can for our students and even for our staff. We want to make sure that buildings have effective and equitable environments. This includes being predictable, consistent, positive, and safe. We want students to feel safe when they come into the building. We want them to feel safe with who they can go to if there's a problem. We want their schedules and their routines to be consistent. We want their days and the expectations and rules to be predictive. And we also want to make sure that we're reinforcing students and encouraging relationships in a positive way. And also between school and home, we want to make sure that teachers and school administration are creating those positive relationships with family and community as well. There's some misconceptions about what PBIS is. A lot of times, TJ and I hear that the thought is that PBIS is this rewards program, so that when a kid does well, then they earn a reward. And that's a little bit disheartening to know, because PBIS is a great way to focus on creating, again, those consistent, predictable, positive, and safe environments. So PBIS is a framework. It's not a program. There's not a curriculum for it. It's a framework that identifies those clear school-wide expectations. A big piece of PBIS is how we teach those expectations to students in all school settings. Another big piece is that students are recognized and reinforced, not necessarily through rewards or tangibles, but that we're building relationships with those students. And finally, there's an organized system of corrective actions and disciplinary policies that can really help decrease those misbehaviors. Again, we want things to be consistent, but we also want things to be fair. So when we're looking at disciplinary actions, we want to make sure that we're still being proactive and that we're restoring relationships and the harm that has been done, building those skills for students. So hopefully those who are on with us today recognize school-wide expectations that may look similar to your schools or your district expectations. The most popular that we see is be respectful, be responsible, and be safe. We also see pride, we see roar. So if in chat, you know your school-wide expectations, we'd love to hear what they are. So put those in chat. And if you're not aware, then I'm glad you're here because we're going to help you later with how to ask about those PBIS expectations that may be a part in your building.
So Tara, I just put in the chat that many times it is tied to the school's mascot. And I'm
Yeah.
seeing be a Spartan, be a
Great.
star. We also have PAWS,
Great.
PAWS. That's also a very popular one as well.
Great. So even though this looks complicated and it looks like a lot, I hope that you're not overwhelmed by it. This is a PBIS matrix of expectations for common areas in the school to follow. We take those expectations, being safe, being responsible, being respectful, and looking at different areas within the school and what behaviors we specifically want to see in those areas. So if you are aware of your expectations, that's great. I hope that you were also sent home a copy of the matrix to follow along with. Additionally, we hope that you take that matrix and think about what does it look like in your home. You can use the same, you can use be respectful, be responsible, be safe. You can use be a star, you can use pause, you can use we are Spartans to complement what your students are learning about the expectations in school. But think about what areas or what activity times would it be great to have expectations in place at home. So I'm going to give you a minute to reflect on this home matrix and think about what expectations would benefit your child or what areas, what activities at home would best benefit your child. So I'm going to have you think about that, but I'm also going to go back and show you the home matrix to help give you some ideas. Building on TJ's comment in chat, we've also seen staff making sure that they have examples and a matrix included for what are their expectations. So not only are we focusing on student expectations, but we're also looking at the adult expectations within those areas at school. Any questions, comments, anything that anybody would like to share at this time? Okay, we're going to move right along. Some of the examples that you may see from your school building are how to reinforce and acknowledge those expectations. So you might be seeing students bring home pride tickets. You might have your kiddo bring home a student of the week for building character. And what's great is that SEL skills and the character building that we're learning through that development can also be reinforced and acknowledged through this PBIS practice. So in addition to tangible pride tickets or tokens that students might be collecting, we're also encouraging and asking teachers to up their reinforcement and acknowledgement of what the students are doing. So giving that verbal cue of, I see what you're doing, you're following the expectation, great job. Your actions are showing that you're a responsible third grader. Your actions are showing that you're being a safe seventh grader. There might also be acknowledgement based on classroom and group behavior. So if cafeteria is a problem area in the school, then the class that shows the best expectations and cleanest behavior within the cafeteria may earn the golden fork, right? Or we might have a classroom dustpan as the winner for the classroom. So reinforcement can be done in several ways. And again, that's about giving feedback to students when expectations are followed in the way that adults want to see, but also in building relationships to encourage students through positive messages and positive feedback. There are different ways that we use a correction system in different buildings and in different districts. Aside from a talk or a call home or time away from an activity or time away from lunch, we might have students complete a stop and think sheet or fill out a behavior contract or reflect on their behavior to think about what their actions did, who they impacted, but most importantly, how are they going to change their behavior and what will they do next? Along with discipline, it's important that we teach students the skills that they're missing. Because a lot of times when there's misbehavior, we have students who need some help with building and modeling those skills. So we hope that they practice. But we want to make sure that we're teaching and reteaching those students. We might talk about a time when we look at respect and what respect means in different culture. We might look at what does it look like and sound like to be responsible. So we might look at building organizational skills for that student. The goals for our schools regarding PBIS is to create those environments that help students to achieve success. We also want to make sure that we're preventing problem behaviors, that we're teaching those appropriate behaviors, and reinforcing and acknowledging when we see those appropriate behaviors happen across students, staff, and family members. Our other goal in our schools are to make sure that we understand why the problem behaviors are happening and make sure that we can address those situations in an effective way. So it's great to have the team get together, look at data, analyze that information, and make decisions about the misbehaviors so that they can decrease and that we can have students be more successful. So ways that you can help implement those PBIS practices at home is to decide on what expectations you might want to have. And these can be similar to the school expectations. It can include that matrix. And then having a family meeting to talk about and explain those expectations. Also making sure to use positive reinforcement for appropriate behaviors and expected behaviors that we want to see, but then also using fair consequences for inappropriate behaviors and when misbehaviors occur. How can you support PBIS at school and at home? Well, first, remind your child of the school-wide expectations in the morning. And then when they come home, ask how they demonstrated those expectations. At home, again, having similar expectations in your home activities and providing that positive reinforcement when they've made good choices. Also, talking with your child's teacher about PBIS practices in the school. So if you haven't seen a copy of the matrix, ask if it's available. If you're not sure what your expectations are, ask about it. Ask about how you can help acknowledge your student and what is going on in the building. And then ask for updates about your own child's behavior. Other ways to get involved: participate in school functions, maybe even become a part of PTA or PTO, and coordinate efforts with the PBIS team at school. And if school surveys are sent home, then participate in those as well. We're seeing more and more schools send surveys home to parents, making sure that your students are feeling safe and that those predictable environments are happening at school. Also to make sure that you have been given that information. Any questions about PBIS before we switch over and focus our attention on SEL? TJ, I can't hear you.
In the chat, Brittany said, this is also building upon and supporting growth in self-regulation as well. And I was like, thank you for leading us into our
Awesome.
next section.
Great segue right into it. And again, I love that you're making that connection of these PBIS practices really do promote SEL skills. And in turn, the SEL skills that we're going to talk about really help students to follow through with those expectations and PBIS practices that are at school. Any other comments or questions? Okay, great. We're going to move right along to SEL. This is again that focus on developing those skills so that students can be successful. As we talked, PBIS or the practices of clarifying expectations and how our behavior actions can be successful. Now we're turning to SEL developmental skills. The importance of teaching these skills focuses on our emotions, because our emotions affect how and what we learn, our relationships, because they provide a foundation for learning. SEL skills also helps reduce barriers to learning and has a positive impact on school performance, not only behaviorally, but academically as well. To be a good citizen is what we want our students to graduate as, and having those SEL skills can give them the base to do that. We're also seeing that SEL skills are being demanded by employers. There was a study that, or not a study, a survey that went out and asked employers what were the main qualities that they wanted new employees to have. The majority of those qualities were SEL skills. Not expertise in math, not expertise in writing, but being able to cooperate, being able to negotiate, being able to work as a team, being responsible, being able to show up for the job, getting tasks done. So SEL skills can really help students become employable. We take most of our SEL work from CASEL. There are some documents and resources within your resource links, but CASEL is a collaborative for academic, social, and emotional learning. And they are the front runner in developing what SEL curriculum and what SEL skills and practices look like. So there are 5 core social and emotional competencies that CASEL focuses on. First, self-awareness, then self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. So what does all of that mean? Self-awareness is when you recognize your emotions and you value yourself based on your strengths and even recognizing your limitations. Self-management is how we manage those emotions and behaviors in order to achieve goals and to be social citizens. Social awareness is showing understanding and empathy for others. Relationship skills are forming positive relationships, working in teams, and dealing with conflict. And last, responsible decision-making is making ethical, constructive choices about personal and social behavior. So let's look at 2 of those core competencies. The first 2 is self-awareness and self-management. I apologize if you can hear my dog. Self-awareness is about identifying emotions, giving yourself an accurate self-perception, really recognizing your strengths, your needs, your values, having self-confidence, and that sense of personal impact. Self-management is about controlling those impulses, managing your stress, self-discipline, self-motivation, setting goals, and using organizational skills. Some of the ways that we can do that are teaching our children about identifying those emotions. There's a great color chart in the way that we can express those emotions and how students feel, and possibly the colors that correspond. So you could really do some great art, some art projects with your kids. Also, we're thinking about morning reflection, a time to just, again, take that mindful minute, reflect about yourself, your goals, how you're feeling. You might use a feelings chart with your students. This could be icons or images, or it could even be pictures of your child, showing those emotions. Also journaling, talking about how you feel, talking about the goals or the success you want to have today. Those are great ways that you can think and talk about how your student or how your children's emotions and perceptions of themselves and the actions and behaviors that they take all connect together. Ways that you can promote self-management are through relaxation strategies, deep breathing, yoga, finding a time in a quiet space to listen to music, or being mindful. There are lots of different apps out there. Calm is a great one. Taking a mindful minute, just as we did today, Focus on your senses. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? There are lots of different ways to be mindful. Also, part of self-management is, again, that organization of ways to think and to problem solve. What are things that we can do when conflict arises? How can we calm down? How can we think more clearly? And what choices can we make that are best for that day? The next two core competencies are social awareness and relationship skills. Social awareness is perspective taking, empathy, being able to listen, being able to respect others and appreciate diversity. Relationship skills are about communication, social engagement, building those relationships and working together as a team. Some of the ways that we can promote social awareness is to talk about what it means and what it is to be a good sport. How can we work cooperatively? If we lose, what do we do? If we win, how do we act? Also, a great way is to watch movies and pause and talk. So the first one, Soul Surfer. Want to make sure that these are age appropriate. So when you're watching shows, when you're watching movies, it's great to pause during an emotion and talk about what is the character feeling. When have you as the child felt that way? And when have you as the adult felt that way? The second image is from, oh my gosh, I completely lost. TJ, help me out. Help me out.
I don't recognize the second one, but the first and the third I do.
It's the one about the emotions and the characters.
Inside Out, somebody said?
Inside Out. Thank you. Thank you for whoever put that in the chat. Thank you. Inside Out, of course, has some great conversations about emotions and behavior. And so pausing and talking about those characters and those emotions are great ways to help your child feel and express their emotions. And then Charlie Brown. The characters drawn from Charlie Brown are the most emotive animation ever. So you can talk about, what does Charlie Brown look like? How is he feeling? What should Linus do if he sees someone that way? So there's great ways to talk about not only how your child feels, but empathy, and again, that respect and diversity for others. Community service, how we care and share with others, service projects. If you go on to justserve.org and type in your zip code, it will give you a list of several different community service projects within your area. So if as a family, you'd like to do something like that, please take a look at that resource. Then we talk about how we promote relationship skills. This is when we talk to our kids about how to have a conversation outside of social media, right? Putting our technical devices down and having an actual conversation. Do we know how to write a letter as opposed to an email or a text, right? We want to make sure that we're using those employable skills for our students. We also want to make sure that we're complimenting others and that you as adults are modeling those compliments to one another. We also want to talk about how we negotiate and how choosing a win-win situation is best for everyone. Also, when it comes to friendships, what are healthy relationships? What are unhealthy relationships? And what are the boundaries that we need to put in place for each other? Because as kids grow, right, pretty soon dating comes into play, and we want to make sure that our kids are safe. So talking about those boundaries of friendship and the healthy and unhealthy impacts it can have is really important. The fifth core competency is responsible decision-making. This is when we identify problems, analyze situations, know how to solve those problems, evaluate, monitor what we've done, reflect on that, and think about what is our ethical responsibility. So ways to promote responsible decision-making is to think about how we might discover those options and solutions when a problem arises. So brainstorming ideas about what we can do or what are possible solutions, thinking about the pros and cons, or looking at a step-by-step process in how we understand and follow through with a decision-making process. So now I'd like you to take a moment and reflect on those 5 core skill areas. Which one speaks to you right now? This could be for you personally, or this could be in relation for your child.
So Tara, we have some activity in the chat.
Okay,
Looking at self-management, positive relationships. Ooh, Ashley, restorative practices. Really good one there.
great.
From Brittany.
That
that's
integrates
self-awareness.
right into this work as well.
Yeah. Self-awareness for me and my kids for sure. Thank you, Brittany.
Great, thank you guys. All right, so how can you help develop your child's SEL skills? Well, first of all, making sure that you create a responsive environment that's inclusive of trust, respect, and support. Also, making sure to be aware of the development of your child and what they're working on. So there are some stages of SEL development skills within your resources, so you can also check that out. Also making sure to talk about how to express emotions in constructive ways and safe ways to manage stress. Also think about how you model the skills you want to see. So we know that children not only observe your words, but also your actions. So they're looking at your interactions with your neighbors, when you're on the phone, your interactions at the supermarket. So again, be cognizant of the skills that you want to model for your students. Also, if there's a conflict or you have an angry interexchange with your significant other or another family member, also make sure to model how you problem solve, cool down, and talk about it afterward. Next, making sure to coach those behaviors by providing feedback and encouragement. So allow for problem solving and decision making to take place. And again, when those positive and good choices are made, give encouragement, give positive feedback. Also, take time to provide opportunities to practice all of these skills as well in teachable moments. Create moments to practice empathy, perspective taking, how to appreciate differences, how to identify feelings, and how to make decisions. Lastly, our goal is to promote positive behavior. So we want to make sure that we are teaching behavior skills, incorporating those PBIS practices, thinking about what does it look like and sound like to show responsibility? How do we respectfully disagree? There's going to be conflict. We all know that. So what does it look like to disagree and be respectful at the same time? Also, what are ways that a child can say they need a break, but avoid being rude? And again, that complements our social and emotional learning by having children realize that their actions affect other people and relationships, that when they choose a behavior, there's going to be consequences. Also knowing that adults care about them and won't give up on them when they make those decisions. So as I said, there's going to be an optimistic closure, and we ask you to share one action step on what you're going to do next. So if you're brave, you can share that with us in chat. So what action step are you going to take next? And as you're thinking about that, we are more than welcome to try to answer any questions that you have with the time left.
Go ahead, Brittany. I see you have your hand raised.
Okay, thank you. It's just a really quick question. Thank you both for this presentation tonight. I really appreciate your time. This is really great material. And I really took in a lot, so thank you for that. When you were talking about the core competencies, just from my perspective, it seems like a lot of the families and the kiddos that we are here to help, including some of the kids in my own family, some of those core competencies may be more challenging and more difficult because of their disabilities, you know, whether they have one disability or two or whatever the case is. So I guess when you're helping families with PBIS and these social emotional skills, how do you help families who have these extra challenges for their kids not get discouraged when as you, can you please stop for 1 second? When some of these core competencies, you know, it feels like they're not there, so they're lacking, but you know, their kids aren't lacking. They just have to shift and think outside of the box maybe to help them build upon things that might not come naturally to them.
That's a great question. I think that we need to meet them where they're at. So when we're talking about the 5 core competencies, self-awareness and identifying emotions can be very challenging for many students. A lot of times we might think that that's a preschool or early childhood kind of thing, but age doesn't necessarily dictate what core competency a particular person is at. We also have young adults and adults who struggle with identifying their emotions. So wherever your child is at, that's where we really want to meet them. So once they've learned how to identify those emotions, then we can look at, are they aware of what's happening and how to manage those emotions? Or then how are they expressing that for other people? Are they appreciating perspective taking or putting themselves in someone else's shoes? So again, these all build on each other and it can take time. And again, we have young adults and adults who are still trying to develop these skills. So it does take time and it can go at different speeds for each student. When we're talking about PBIS practices, we want to make sure that there are either picture or visual images that go with expectations to help with developmental disabilities or age appropriate. So in a lot of our preschool and elementaries, we see picture images posted along with use walking feet. There's an image of a person using walking feet. So those are different ways that we can incorporate those PBIS practices at the developmental appropriate age and at the age appropriate time for that child.
Okay, I appreciate you answering that. And I think that would be my action step, to try to meet parents more where they're at, make them feel like these skills, these things that they want their kids to build is accessible it may not be a straight line, but they can get there. And that's my action step, is to try to help parents do what's best for their family and just keep encouraging them and keep things positive.
Great, thank you. And also encourage parents to talk to the schools about making sure that their materials and documents for expectations, for acknowledgement, are also accessible at an appropriate age if they're not already. Thank you.
And just watching the time, Tara, you have about 4 minutes left.
Okay.
And Tara, in the chat, I put the both of our emails along with the evaluation handout.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions, comments? I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen so I can actually see people. All right, as TJ said, we put our contact information, so you can go ahead and email us. Oh, I guess. I did have a contact information slide. Sorry about that.
Okay.
TJ was ahead of me there. I appreciate it, getting that in the chat for me.
I'm sorry, do you have any other online resources that you like to share with parents for social emotional learning? I think you said that, is it Castle?
Castle.org. Yeah.
Yep, I've been to that one. Do you have any other ones that you might recommend parents browse through for more information?
So in the bit.ly link that is provided in the chat, when you click on that and you go into the PBIS folder, there's a Word document. It'll open in Google. Either way, Word document or Google document. And there will be a list of resources, hyperlinks to click on for PBIS and also for SEL. And then at the bottom, there are some sites to visit for early childhood.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm not seeing anything else in the chat box. If anybody, like Tara and TJ said, if you have any questions, you can email them at any time or email me. I will make sure to get the questions to them. Thank you for your time this evening. I hope I personally learned a lot of new information and perspective on this work that, I think in the daily scheme of things is so important, but oftentimes goes by the wayside just when we get in the hustle and bustle of daily life. But just being a parent and an advocate for students, the importance of it does not, should not get passed up. Thank you very much again for coming this evening. Video recording will be available probably in like 2 to 3 days once it gets edited and worked on for accessibility purposes by our communications department. And it will be posted to our social media as well as on our website. You'll see a link to it under our media button. So again, thank you very much for your time this evening, and we hope you all have a good rest of the week and hope to see you all soon.
Thanks, everyone.